Your new specialized bike has arrived. Follow these steps to get your bike built and ready to ride. Inspect the outside of the box for any significant shipping damage. Keep an eye on the internal contents too. If anything appears damaged, contact specialized rider care. Assembly requires basic mechanical skills and quality tools. It is critical that you use a high-quality torque wrench to make sure bolts are tightened to spec. Bolts that are either too loose or too tight may compromise the safety of the assembly. You're at the right video for any mountain or active models. We're using a stump jumper in this example. Before we get started, let's be clear about the tools you need. Torque wrench, 4, 5, and 6 mil hex keys, bike grease, carbon paste, scissors or diagonal cutters, and a pedal wrench. If a plastic torque wrench is not supplied, be sure to acquire your own. It is necessary to safely tighten your equipment to specific values. Torque specifications can be found in the user manual or printed on the part near the bolt. Inside you will find the owner's manual, other manufacturers' manuals, and the assembly guide. You'll also find some additional parts like reflectors. Your bike may arrive in a different box than the one we use in this example. These instructions will make sense for your box too. Refer to the manual for detailed installation instructions. Let's get that thing opened up. Scissors may be necessary to cut open the top panel. See those handles in the middle? Grab those with 2 hands and lift the bike up and out of the box. If it seems a little too heavy, you may want to get an extra set of hands to help. Keep that bike upright and set it down on the floor. Follow along with the assembly guide and completely read the owner's manual, which has important safety information that should be reviewed carefully and entirely before the first ride. This video is a visual guide to supplement those documents. Some of your equipment may be different than the video. Find those detailed instructions in the manual. The tabs from the handles may be out. Push those back into the box and lift the top tray off the wheels and set it aside. Remember to keep all the packaging. Pull the wheels off the tray and keep them nearby. Carefully lay the bike down with the frame side facing up. Cut all the zip ties and remove the protective packaging. The small parts box can be taken out and opened up. You will use the large outer box as a work stand. Lift one of the side flaps up, push the middle cutout section in, and fold the flap down towards the inside of the box. Get the bike and lift it out of the packaging. Place the fork inside the box, fork and stem facing forward, cradling the frame on the cutout. Keep the back end elevated. Do not set it down on the rear derailleur. Use the small parts box under the bottom bracket to hold the rear end up. Bring the rear wheel over and keep it within reach of the box. Now is also a good time to make sure you have a 6mm hex key in your pocket. There's a small spacer in the rear brake caliper. Take it out. Do not squeeze the rear brake lever now that that's removed. Doing so will compress the disc brake pads together. A plastic tire lever can be used to pry the pads apart. Contact rider care for further support. For bikes with disc brakes and through axles, unthread the axle from the rear dropout with that 6mm hex you have in your pocket. Set it aside. Pick up the rear wheel. Rotate the rear derailleur back and slide the wheel up into the frame. Be sure to aim the disc rotor into the rear caliper. Set the bike down and check the wheel alignment. Spread a thin layer of bike-specific grease just on the axle to prevent wear and creaking. Use that 6mm hex in your pocket to thread the axle back into the rear dropouts. Use a torque wrench to fully tighten the axle to specification listed in the manual. For bikes with quick release skewers or rim brakes, follow the detailed instructions in the assembly guide and manual. You will need to install the handlebar on your new bike. Remove the 4 bolts from the faceplate. Make sure to keep them somewhere safe like your pocket. Identify which stem your bike came with. Some are marked no gap. Place the handlebar in the stem and begin attaching the faceplate by threading the bolts in by hand to get started. Make sure the S logo is facing forward and centered. If your stem is not marked no gap, using the torque wrench, gradually tighten each bolt half a turn at a time, alternating in a cross pattern until each bolt begins to feel tight. Recheck the handlebar position to make sure the bar is level and centered in the stem. Finish tightening each bolt with the torque wrench to the specified value labeled on the stem and listed in the manual. If your stem is marked no gap, follow these instructions. Completely screw in the top 2 bolts by hand. Finish tightening, alternating left to right until the faceplate is tight and flush, with no gap. Now, use the torque wrench to alternate left to right, tightening the lower 2 bolts to the specified value on the stem and in the manual. If using your own pedals, be sure to review and follow the manufacturer's instructions. These are general guidelines that work for most pedals. Each pedal is marked L and R for left and right. Grab your grease from your tools and begin by lightly greasing the threads. The right side of the bike has the drivetrain, the chainrings, chain, and cogs. Thread the right pedal into the crank by hand. You'll be turning the pedal towards the front of the bike, clockwise. It is important to realize the left pedal is reverse threaded. Turning it to the left or counterclockwise will thread it onto the crank. Start threading the left pedal by hand, turning towards the front of the bike, counterclockwise. Depending on your pedals, you'll either use a 15mm flat wrench or a hex key to finish threading the pedals all the way into the crank arm. Finish tightening each pedal all the way with either the flat wrench or the hex key. Pedals need to be installed tightly. The rotation of the wrench should have some resistance and leave a noticeable imprint on your hand. Have the front wheel within reach. Most bikes have a through axle hub. Lift the front of the bike up and remove the front axle. Some will have a thin, quick-release skewer. Follow these instructions for the through axle. Lightly grease just the axle. Remove the spacer from the front caliper. Grab the front wheel with your other hand. Line up the wheel with the dropouts and aim the disc rotor into the center of the caliper. Lower the front end down and check the alignment. Using the hex key, thread the axle into the dropouts. Using the torque wrench, tighten to the spec listed in the manual. Loosen the collar in order to raise the saddle to your desired height. Do not exceed the minimum insertion line on the seat post. That line must be inside the frame. Your frame may have additional insertion requirements or limitations. Review the applicable section in the user manual included with your bicycle. Line up the nose of the saddle pointing straight ahead, in line with the top tube. Using a 4 or 5mm hex, whichever is the correct size for your bike's clamp, tighten the seat post clamp until it just holds the post in place. Finish tightening using a torque wrench to the value specified on the collar or in the manual. If you don't know your saddle height, there's a retool sizing app on specialized.com you can use to find a safe starting point. Some bikes will have a wedge assembly in the frame. Refer to the manual for those specific instructions. Also, refer to the manual for more detailed instructions if your bike has a seat post battery for electronic shifting or a dropper post. Your bike is almost ready to roll. Next, you need to fully air up the tires. So grab your floor pump. Pump the tires up to your desired pressure. Refer to the tire's sidewall for pressure range. Check your wheel manual or decal on the rim itself to see if your wheels have a maximum pressure limit. Do not exceed it. If you have a mountain bike with a suspension fork and shock, refer to the manufacturer's manual for detailed instructions, including air pressure, damping setup, and regular maintenance intervals. Before riding, double-check the tightness of all the bolts with the torque wrench. Follow the mechanical safety check as outlined by the bicycle owner's manual. Also, you can check the tightness of the handlebars by holding the front wheel between your legs and twisting them side to side. If anything moves, realign everything and tighten the bolts to specification. Contact Specialized Rider Care with any questions or issues you may have with your new bike. Log on to specialized.com and register your new bike with your unique serial number. Your bike frame's lifetime warranty is activated when you register. Enjoy the ride.